Tonight we will be discussing From Now On We're Stardust, an exhibition that combines visual mixed media art and poetry while incorporating themes of space and astral imagery. Jude Williams is a sophomore English major at Centenary College of Louisiana with interests in creative writing and poetry as well as visual art, often spending long hours editing poetry and songs that expand upon visual artworks. From Now On We're Stardust will be open through September 22nd. And with that, I will turn it over to our speaker.
Hello everyone, it's nice to meet you. I know there's a lot of people here, some friends, some family members, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out. It's very, very special that you're here. It wouldn't be as big an event, I guess, without you, so you guys make this very special for being here. So, thank you guys. I've never used one of these mics before. I hope it's working. I guess I just wanted to start by saying if anybody has any inherent questions after seeing the exhibit, we can also see it after, but if not, I can go and explain different poems or my process of making any of the pieces if anybody has any questions. Well, that one was Clementine's Mobile. That was a 1200 pipe cleaner star that I made in my May class. It was a sculpture class back when Shay was still here. So I made that, and I have in my sketchbook sketches of the math for the star, but I made that and then built the reinforcements with twigs from my garden and tape, and just put it on a string, and that's pretty much how I did it. It was just another assignment that I knew I was going to use for this exhibit.
Can you talk about your inspiration for the exhibition?
Yeah, I would say my main inspiration was one of my friends, the celebration of his life, and I guess also a poem I wrote before this kind of event happened in my life about my grandmother and comparing her to a star and, star-like icons like Freddie Mercury. I wrote that poem before I wrote this other poem in the exhibit about Wes. So him and my grandmother and loss and love, that's kind of the inspirations for this show.
Can you tell us about the process of making those stars and what is the importance? What do stars mean to you?
So the process of making these stars, I made them probably 2 to 3 years ago with my dad. It was initially for another exhibit that never happened. He just wanted to get some canvas, plywood, and we would just trace stencils and cut them and sand them. And then the making of all of these stars took so many years, I guess, from when I first made them to when I finally needed them for this show. I had a lot of help with different friends just sitting with me while I put them together, painting the base coat and sketching the figures and, all the fun it was just putting together the stars.
And what about the meaning? What did they mean?
The meaning of the portraits, it's just about like the 3 people that were in my life at the time. Whenever I had this news, I don't know if I can say it, but one of my friends, Wes, passed, and I was with my partner at the time, and I got the call, and it was a very hard call, and the other person that's got their portrait up there, she isn't here either, but she was also close friends with Wes, and we would spend time together and hang out. So I just think like these people, even if they didn't see each other at the same time, share much of each other's lives, they're still important to my life with them. So that's kind of the meaning and significance of the portrait stars. The smaller stars are just really pretty and fun.
How did you decide what to name them?
The names of the big stars, I wanted to do it by color. So I wanted Nate's to be yellow, like the sun, because I have allusions to him being the sun in my other poetry. And for Wes, I wanted it to be blue because I knew I wanted to base it on the primary colors to kind of have that triangle effect. So I used the complementary colors for each of them and reference the names of the colors in their names. So I think it's blue sigil and yellow sun and red giant. And Emma's just always been red. That's all I can say about her. She's got bright red hair and, you know.
Jude, when and why did you start working with found media?
I've probably been doing it for a long time, maybe since like elementary school. I've just been doing art for a long time, and one of my favorite things was collages. That's a pretty fun medium that I like because it's so free. You can put anything you want on there.
Can you talk about the poetry in the room and how that may have come before or after some of the artworks that are surrounding them?
Yeah. So the way that some of these poems kind of tie into the exhibit, most of the poems were finished before the exhibit, except for one that came later. But both poems represent or talk about directly my grandmothers, both of my grandmothers and my friend Wes. And I had written first the poem about my grandmother, all those stars in the black night sky I see are dead. I wrote that one first, and then right after I wrote four-leaf clovers, and that was the original name. It's a different name now, but it's okay. And then Persia was my last one. It was a poem that I had written in creative writing my senior year, and I had really wanted to kind of look at the poetry that I had for my family because, you know, I've got a poem for my mom, I've got a poem for my dad, my sister, you know, my partner, but, you know, I just wanted to, I guess, challenge myself to rework that writing and make it connect, make it stronger. 3 pieces of writing, 3 portraits, you know, I just kind of like the balance.
Did you have any roadblocks in the creative process, or do you feel like it came more innately to you?
I think one of my big roadblocks at first was writing the piece of paper that you guys are reading. That was just pretty difficult for me. I ended up doing it in one day. I procrastinated for 2 weeks and then wrote it in one day, if you guys wanted to know. But just trying to know what to say to you all, that was pretty important for me. And kind of outlining this exhibit, it has a bit of pressure.
One of the things you wrote in this page was that there's a strong meaning. We are without knowing, without trying, destined to become stardust forever. Why do you believe that?
Well, the beginning of the universe happened with stardust, you know, just colliding. It's a beautiful thing, a big chaotic thing, and we all come from used stars. Other stars come from used stars. That's kind of the meaning of creating with found material, like pieces of CDs used to make these stars, and you know, things that I have laying around, markers. just creating stars from dead stars, because even when things are gone, they still have this meaning. And I guess whenever I was writing that, I just wanted to say, like, we're gonna come from this and we're gonna go back to it one day. So if we wanna make it anything we want to, we can, and we should.
Do the poems always come first and then the visual art, or do you find that relationship goes both ways?
I find it directly relates. A lot of like the visuals that I had for making Nate's Star came from poems. You know, Wes's Star, I had to have his poem before I even thought of making a portrait. So I would say it is important, especially with my poetry books. I don't know if you guys look through them, but there are the originals and different poems that tie into it that I didn't necessarily type out. It's just it's a building process, but yes, I would say that the visuals go along with it. It's just kind of back and forth.
If you had more time, what would you add or change?
I would add the QR codes to let people hear it. Those will be added later, but the poems will be spoken out loud, and you'll be able to have a QR code to scan and listen to the poem while you read it. If I had more time, I would have made like a star rug. Yeah, and probably like made an entire star outfit. I probably would have been sitting up here like a wizard.
So do you think it's definitely given you inspiration for like possible exhibitions in the future? Like getting thoughts going on like senior exhibitions?
I definitely think so. I thought it would be so much harder than it was to make all these pieces, but like 25 pieces in, it really builds pretty fast if you just have a formula, I guess, to making them. But I think it's made it a lot more realistic.
Are you like aware of your process whenever you're creating? Like, do you know that, oh, I've created this piece, so I'm probably going to make an art based off of it? Or is it like, oh, I'm sitting at my sketchbook, I need to write something, or I need to draw something, and it's you end up finding it correlates with what you've written?
I think that when I'm writing, it'll definitely correlate. Like the writing that I've done throughout this exhibition, I'd say kind of builds off of each other. But as for my process, I really try to keep, I guess, markers for my visual art, like having some kind of deadline and a process to getting the base, sketching the portrait thing, highlighting and fixing the face, doing the hair, and then the background and all the details on top. It's just like marking off checks on a list.
Did you learn anything about yourself that surprised you through this exhibition process?
I can do an exhibition like pretty fast. It was pretty fast, guys. And I didn't even have to pay for the pipe cleaners. I don't know how I would have found like 12,000 pipe cleaners, 1,200 pipe cleaners. I have learned to be more patient, and I think more messy with my work, because people don't know what it looks like in my head, and people will still like it. And getting help, I think, was a big thing with this. I wanted to include a lot of people in this exhibit, and making this exhibit, and the different kind of milestones I had in its creation, you know, finally finishing portraits and just starting with small stars. But I think what I learned the most was just getting help and having fun with these small parts.
Jude, in your personal statement, you said that you want to work as a professional artist in the South after graduation. Why is place important to you?
I would like to stay in the South just because I kind of am very fond of the people here and the life I have in this culture. And I have family in other parts of the U.S., but I don't really have that kind of connection to it. I kind of grew up here, and I find something that's very, very cherished about the South and Southern literature, and, you know, being a person from the South, you gotta know.
Do you feel like that's reflected in your work?
Definitely, especially my my poetry, like in the last Pandora, or maybe the one before. I use a lot of kind of Southern dialect whenever I write, so that and situations from living down here, I write about that.
Jude, what do you do in your poetry that you can't do in the visual art, and vice versa? What do you do with your visual art that you don't do in your poetry?
Something that I think I don't really do as much in my visual art is talk about people. I can definitely show people, but I can't talk about like their humanity, their kind of ego, or maybe my hopes for them. I can't communicate that as much. Really my dreams, my hopes, I put that in a lot of my writing, but you can't always see that, and I like to be more direct. I feel like you can paint so much better with a pen sometimes.
What was the process of collecting the media for the stars like? Like, did you know this was going to go here, or did it come as it was happening?
So for the stars, I was originally going to use like broken mirror, but I found out it was really expensive and hard to buy mirror, and like it was so thick, it was so expensive, I couldn't find any. And I was going to originally layer each star maybe 4 times so it could stay on the wall. Could you imagine how little room there would be in there if I did that? But I was thinking about this place that my friend Sanaya took me to, where they have these bins at Goodwill, and you can go and get CDs. So I found all the loose CDs that I could in a visit, and I thought these are going to be perfect. So the guy didn't want to scan all of them, so he gave them to me for $5. And that's how I got so many CDs.
Do you feel like there were any risks that you took while making the art for this exhibition?
I think the books was a bit of a risk, because there are some poems in there that, in some of my personal writings, I use it as a letter book, almost. There's a type of poetry like that where lace and pyrite, you talk to each other, type of letter poetry book. Epistolary poems, yeah. The part that's blocked off is epistolary poems to me and Nate. But he gave me that poppy book whenever he went to Paris and Europe, and it was one of the gifts that he had for the day that I found out about Wes. So, you know, I was just writing in that book, and I don't know, it kind of connected me to him and both of them in that way. So I don't know if I answered that question. I'm sorry.
How does it feel to have so many people that love and care about you here to witness
It's so nice.
You fulfilling your dreams and like advancing your dreams
Yes,
for the future.
I think so. I feel like I'm in a dream. Just having all these people here. I'm very thankful and a bit nervous. But I hope I'm saying all the right stuff.
For the little stars with the CDs, how did you decide what to name them?
So, whenever I came to put what I had finished up on the wall, I had to name all of my pieces and then get a price for them to get insurance for the museum. So, whenever I was doing that, I didn't have any specific names for the tiny stars because they weren't going to be someone's name or based on a color. So, I just looked at different clusters because I thought that, the CDs look like clusters on there, and there's different star clusters. So I just looked at pictures of their names and what they look like, and then kind of used glitter and gemstones to mimic the shapes of the constellations. But yeah, I picked the coolest names.
So there are obviously a lot of contemporary references to stars and the universe. What made you pick the Fall Out Boy first single and then the most recent album as opposed to?
So I went to a Fall Out Boy concert recently. I recently went to a Fall Out Boy concert, but I've always loved Fall Out Boy. And I feel like recently with my last semester, I had a pop poetics class by the wonderful Dr. Martin. And she had a lot of good books about just different pop culture figures. And I got hooked in with these Fall Out Boy books by Hanif Willis Adarakib. And I referenced him in some of my poetry and some other pieces I didn't include, but his style of writing really influenced me, and it kind of brought me back into dissecting Fall Out Boy's music. But From Now On We're Enemies, that's the other song I used, aside from this album, Stardust, whatever. Gosh, I'm sorry. I should know the name. But I put those two together because I did a dissection of the song From Now On We're Enemies, and I like the message of it being a contemporary band and a contemporary tone, but the subject is about Mozart and his battle in the movie Amadeus, and also real life. It happened in real life. But there's a movie Amadeus that it references, and I was like, these guys are such nerds. They are talking about Mozart in a song and an album about hips and hearts, and I was like, in love, pretty shocked, pretty enamored, and I thought it sounded cool when it got squished together. So those are a few of my reasons.
Do you have any art or poems that just come from particularly just brainless thoughts you just want to get out and then retroactively add it into or feel a certain attachment, emotional connection?
Yes, I have some poems that start as titles, or just sections of lines that I like. Maybe it's just like two songs that I thought would be a cool mashup that turned into a poem. It's anything, but I definitely write a lot of mindless stuff sometimes.
Jude, if there are some aspiring poets here who haven't started writing poetry yet but might want to, how should they start? What advice would you give them to begin, and what might they gain from writing poetry?
Well, if you're scared to start because you think you might be bad at poetry, you should go to poetry readings and you should bring poetry that you didn't write that you like, because then you can read it with a bunch of people. You should maybe sign up for classes, maybe talk with a poetry professor. If you think that you want to write poetry, then you should probably start writing poetry, because it's one of the easiest writing mediums for me. I think anything can be a beautiful poem, and it can be silly, it can be sad, it can be horrible, but it's still art. So I'd go where people love poetry.
I'll piggyback on that and ask if there are any aspiring artists that are here that are maybe scared to do their first exhibition. This is your first solo exhibition. You've been featured in other exhibitions, but this is your first solo one. What advice do you have?
Well, I have been in other exhibitions where I wasn't a solo, so I would say, I worked my way up to this by having, some of the pieces that were in there in other exhibitions, like Dreams Destroy, that was in the Pandora exhibition, so that helped me get into the idea of being published and having my art published and going to these meetings. There's artist talks for Pandora, so going to artist talks, going to museums to see different events and asking a lot of questions, talking to artists that you know, because if you start asking, you can probably figure it out. I didn't think that I would be able to make this exhibit over the summer or as a sophomore, but it just all depends on how badly you want it.
What do you hope people will take away from your exhibition?
That you can make anything with anything, and we do it all the time, and we've been doing it forever. I know it's vague, but it can mean anything you want it to be. Just continue to make things from tragedy, continue to make things from joy and trauma and the harsh parts of life. Just make everything important. Make everything as important as a poem on the wall, because it is, and it can always be that important.
Do you have a favorite piece?
I think that my favorite piece, it's either the sculpture or it's Wes's star, I think, because it's my favorite colors. But the sculpture, I think it's pretty cool.
What are you going to do with the sculpture after the exhibit? Where does it go?
That is such a question. Do you know why? Nobody knows why. So it's called Clementine's Mobile because I have a cat named Clementine. And what I was doing with the sculpture before this exhibit was, he was using it as like a throne. Basically, he was just laid up in the middle of it. Because I can't hang that in my house. I can't hang that anywhere except here. I don't know where I'm going to put it. Maybe by my front door.
Every day, right in the middle of it. That's exactly what
Trap anybody that comes over. But I'm not sure if anybody wants to purchase it. It's $300. But I could really give it to you for not $300 if you have a place for it.
Are any of the artworks for sale?
Yes, they are for sale, except the writings. I mean, I could sign something for you, but they're all for sale. Prices are semi-negotiable.
Well, thank you.